he suddenly jolted awake in fear. The moment he looked down, a scream escaped his mouth. In place of his real legs, mechanical legs were attached to his body. Furious and terrified, he kicked the security door so hard that it shattered open. Running out into the corridor, guards immediately pointed weapons at him, but at that exact moment, he felt an overwhelming power flowing through his new legs. In a single second, he covered hundreds of meters. His speed was so unbelievable that even bullets could not catch up to him. This movie starts in a world where this runner, named Nick, was once just a brilliant MIT student and an expert hacker. He was a top-tier academic who knew everything from astronomy to complex computer networks. But since childhood, a severe disease had withered his legs, forcing him to walk with the support of forearm crutches. The nightmare that brought him to this robotic transformation began during a cross-country road trip with his girlfriend Haley and his best friend Jonah. They were helping Haley move her belongings to a new city. But the journey took a dark turn when Nick received a hostile message from a legendary, anonymous hacker named Nomad. They had been clashing online for months, but this time, the hacker had directly breached Haley's laptop. Nomad began provoking them by sending live pictures of their car taken directly from highway traffic cameras, proving he was monitoring their every move. Jonah suggested they track the signal down and teach him a lesson once and for all. Nick, fueled by deep insecurities that Haley wanted to leave him because of his physical disability, agreed to hunt the hacker down, no matter what. The mysterious GPS coordinates eventually led them deep into the desert, stopping at an isolated, completely abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere. Nick and Jonah went inside the dark structure, searching the dusty rooms while recording everything on camera. Suddenly, Haley screamed in absolute terror from outside. The moment Nick rushed out into the dark night, he saw her body rising unnaturally into the air. Before he could react, a blinding white light flashed directly into his face, and he completely lost consciousness. When Nick finally opened his eyes after the abduction, he was confined to a wheelchair inside a sterile, windowless room, his entire body completely numb. A man wearing a heavy biohazard hazmat suit was sitting across from him. His name was Dr. Wallace Hollis. He calmly told Nick that he was there to help restore his fractured memory, claiming that their group had come into direct contact with an unclassified alien life form and might be severely infected. The medical team interrogated him for days, keeping him in total isolation. Nick demanded to see Jonah and Haley, but the staff remained completely silent. Then one morning, while being wheeled to a medical lab, Nick caught a brief glimpse of Haley lying unconscious on a bed inside a glass containment room. He tried to reach her, but guards violently held him back. Upon returning to his cell, he suddenly heard Jonah's voice echoing through a ventilation grate from the adjacent room. Nick called out, telling him about seeing Haley and confessing that he could no longer feel his legs. Jonah revealed a terrifying detail. The staff had given him a strange fluid to drink, and since then, his heart did not feel human anymore. Both friends decided to secretly observe everything around them and share data. Nick began mapping the facility, memorizing the digital keypad code and tracking staff movements. During the next interrogation, the doctors placed several geometric objects in front of him to test his cognitive processing. Nick refused to cooperate, stating he wouldn't speak until he was allowed to see Haley. Forced by his resistance, the doctors took him to her room, but Haley was in a deep, unresponsive coma. When Nick returned to his room to relay this to Jonah, his friend's voice suddenly cut off. At the same time, strange experiments were being conducted on livestock within the facility. Suddenly, the power failed, plunging the sector into darkness as someone attempted a violent escape. Nick hid inside a dark bathroom, and when the auxiliary lights came back on, guards dragged him out. On the corridor walls, Nick noticed massive, deep gashes torn into the reinforced concrete. When he confronted Dr. Hollis about Jonah's whereabouts, the doctor delivered a chilling psychological blow, claiming Jonah was never brought to this facility at all. Nick knew it was a lie. His friend had clearly broken out. Spurred by Jonah's escape, Nick executed his own breakout plan. Using the memorized keypad codes, he sneaked Haley out of her room, navigating the labyrinthine corridors. Just as they reached the final exit vault, Dr. Hollis appeared with an armed squad, capturing them before Nick lost consciousness again. This brings us back to the moment he woke up with cybernetic legs. Realizing he possessed terrifying, superhuman strength, he smashed the reinforced security doors open, overpowering every guard in his path while carrying Haley with him. As they descended via an elevator, the doctor confronted him through a speaker, warning that going outside would expose them to extreme alien danger. Nick ignored the warning, sprinting through a long transport tunnel until they finally breached the outer perimeter. Outside, Haley finally regained consciousness. Looking around, they were devastated to find themselves in the middle of a barren, endless desert canyon with absolutely nothing visible for miles. They walked until they hit a deserted highway where an old station wagon approached. The driver, an eccentric old lady, agreed to give them a ride. But after driving a short distance, the woman began muttering bizarre, nonsensical phrases before slamming the brakes and laughing in a deeply unsettling mechanical way. Terrified, Nick and Haley scrambled out of the vehicle, fleeing to a nearby isolated gas station. Nick placed Haley safely on the back of an old truck while he tried to use a payphone, only to find the lines dead. Turning around, he saw the truck suddenly roaring to life and speeding away with Haley trapped inside. Realizing the driver was an agent of the facility, Nick ignited the power in his mechanical legs. He sprinted down the asphalt at unbelievable speed, catching up to the accelerating vehicle. The driver slammed the door into Nick, knocking him down, but Nick stood back up, pushed his cybernetic limbs to their absolute limit, and matched the truck's high velocity. Seeing him outside the window, Haley managed to find a shotgun inside the cabin. Holding the driver at gunpoint, they threw the driver out onto the road and hijacked the truck themselves. They drove for hours until the highway abruptly ended at a massive canyon dead end. Forced to turn back, Nick realized the topography made no sense. The single road formed a perfect, inescapable loop. Seeking answers, they entered a deserted visitor center nearby and found a local map. The map confirmed the impossibility. There was only one solitary road isolated in a void. With Haley's physical condition deteriorating rapidly, they decided to hole up inside the center for the night. Hours later, tactical teams armed with high-tech weapons surrounded the building. While hiding in the shadows, a figure stepped out to protect them. It was Jonah. But Jonah was completely transformed. His arms had been replaced with massive, destructive robotic forearms, explaining the deep gouges on the facility walls during his escape. Jonah pointed out a matching serial number burned into his own skin, Nick's arm, and Haley's neck. When the numbers were calculated together, the total equaled 51. Jonah warned them that they were trapped inside Area 51, treated like literal lab rats for military cybernetic weapons testing. The next morning, after Jonah helped them evade the initial search party, they moved out in the truck. Up ahead, a massive military checkpoint blocked the road, secured by heavy hydraulic steel pillars that could only be lowered via a terminal in a nearby guard tower. Jonah volunteered to clear the path, entering the control room. But before he could override the system, a sniper bullet shattered his glasses, blinding his vision and rendering him unable to input the hacking code. Realizing time was up, Jonah charged outside, using the immense hydraulic strength of his robotic arms to manually rip the massive steel pillars right out of the concrete foundation. Nick and Haley gunned the engine and broke through, but Jonah remained behind, riddled with automated gunfire. Tears streaming down their faces, Nick drove onto a massive, towering suspension bridge that seemed to span into infinity. Standing directly in the center of the bridge was Dr. Hollis. Before the truck could ram through, spike strips blew the tires, causing the vehicle to flip violently. Haley was severely injured and knocked unconscious. A military helicopter instantly landed, hoarding her away into the sky. Nick, bleeding and broken, forced his mechanical body to stand up one last time as the doctor walked toward him. Nick looked closely at the doctor's uniform name tag, which read Damon. In a flash of mathematical clarity, Nick read the name backward. It spelled Nomad, the exact handle of the legendary hacker who had compromised their university servers and lured them into the desert. The doctor smiled, confirming the truth. He admitted to framing Nick at MIT, intercepting Haley's system, and orchestrating the entire chase to test their psychological limits. Whatever condition your friends are in today, you are responsible for it, Damon stated coldly. He then revealed the ultimate scientific truth. They were fusing alien technology with human biology, and out of every specimen tested, Nick's brain and nervous system had achieved a perfect, flawless synchronization with the cybernetic limbs. He was their greatest success. Fueled by absolute rage, Nick dug his mechanical heels into the concrete and sprinted toward Damon at supersonic speed. The world blurred around him as his velocity shattered physical limits until he suddenly crashed violently into an invisible, shimmering wall in midair. The impact shattered the illusion, throwing him right through the physical barrier. Nick tumbled onto a metallic floor and stood up, looking back through the transparent wall. On the other side, Dr. Damon stood on the bridge, slowly removing his biohazard helmet. Beneath the visor, there was no human face, only a complex, blinking cybernetic alien android. Nick turned around to look ahead, and the breath left his lungs. There was no sky, no desert, and no bridge. He was staring directly into the dark, infinite void of outer space. The entire canyon, the highway, and the facility were all contained within a colossal, ring-shaped biome, inside a massive alien mothership traveling through the cosmos. As Nick looked up at the metallic hull, he saw the ship's registration number stamped in massive font, 23541, the exact sequence marked on his own flesh. It was never Area 51. It was an extraterrestrial vessel belonging to a race of robotic aliens, evaluating humanity as raw components for their technology. And as the ship drifted deeper into the dark universe, Nick realized his journey had only just begun. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to smash that subscribe button for our next recap, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below letting me know what you think about this movie.